In the classroom of Class 2-3, there was a burst of air filled with air. The title of Mathematical Simulation Competition is written on the blackboard, and there are a bunch of dense topics below, as if they were deliberately difficult to do. Sun Yu sat in the second row of inverted arch by the window, lowering his head. His pencil in his hand was painted on the draft paper, and his heart was filled with irritation. Sun Yu, please write quickly, don't be stupid there. Li Xiaopeng, a deskmate, poked him with his elbow and said in a low voice, this simulation game will be the number of choices in the school next month. Zhang Lingzi has already done halfway. Look at his proud look. Sun Yu looked up and saw that, sure enough, Zhang Zizheng, in the front row, turned his face lightly and casually glanced at the classmates in the back row, with a mocking smile on the corner of his mouth. That look was clearly saying, you guys don't have the energy to be exhausted. Sun Yu gritted his teeth and felt unhappy. He knew that he had achieved average results and was in math all year round. Every time he came back from the exam, his father's disappointed eyes pierced like a knife. His family is not well off, and his father works on the construction site, and it is already very difficult to support him in school. If he can't make any results, he really doesn't know how to meet his family's expectations. The system detected that the host was in a high-pressure environment, and the competitive competition system was being started. Suddenly, a cold mechanical sound erupted in Sun Yu's brain, which made him tremble and his pen fell to the ground. What's the matter? Who's talking? Sun Yu looked around and found that his classmates were all burying their heads and no one paid attention to him at all. The system has designated host Sun Yu. His current ability, the mathematical competition genre, unlocks, the problem-solving speed is increased by 300%, and the logical analysis ability is improved to the top. Please pay attention to the current competition and complete the first battle to win the Novice Award. Sun Yu's brain buzzed, as if he was struck by lightning. What is this? System? Talent? Is it hard to feel illusion when I feel too stressed? Sun Yu, are you still fucking me in a daze? If you don't write it, you'll hand in the blank paper. Li Xiaopeng urged again. Sun Yu returned to his senses and looked down at the test paper. The original topics that looked like heavenly books now seemed to have been disassembled, and each step of the solution clearly appeared in the brain. He held the pen tightly, his palms were sweating slightly, and tried to write the first step to guide him. Yes, that's it. The prompt sound in the brain resounded again. Still, the host can jump directly over the middle step and get the final answer. Sun Yu's heart beat faster, and the pen on his hand seemed to be possessed by a demon, and he quickly wrote the answer on the test paper. 1 question, 2 questions. In less than 10 minutes, he actually finished the entire trial. Is this too disgusting, right? Sun Yu couldn't believe it himself, rubbed his eyes, confirming that the answer on the test paper was not a bad idea. He looked up and Zhang Zizi was still slowly checking his answers, and sometimes he smiled lightly, obviously very satisfied with his performance. Time is here, hand in the paper. Lin Jiqing, a mathematician teacher on the lecture stage, clapped her hands, her voice clear and gentle. Everyone hand in the trial paper, I will finish the correction before the next class. Sun Yu took a deep breath, stood up and handed over the test paper. When Lin Jiqing took the test paper, her eyes stayed on him for a second, and she smiled slightly. Sun Yu, you look very confident today. Sun Yu's face turned red and he kept his head down. Okay. Lin Jiqing didn't say anything more and turned around to collect test papers from other classmates. Sun Yu returned to his seat, and his heart was like a deer ramming. Teacher Lin is a new mathematical teacher in their class. She is young and beautiful, and she talks about class style. Many boys in the class secretly like her. Although Sun Yu is inferior, every time he sees Lin Jiqing's gentle smile, he feels warm in his heart. Sun Yu, what are you just fucking? Is it so fast, terrible? Li Xiaopeng came over and was full of curiosity. No, nothing wrong, it should be right. Sun Yu replied in a low voice, feeling that he was inadequate. Tisk, stop blowing, wait until the results come out and see how you cry. Zhang Zi in the front row suddenly turned over, his language was full of ridicule. At your level, do Do you still want to compete with me for the number of selected candidates in the school? Make a dream. Sun Yu clenched his fist tightly, and his face was red, and he couldn't respond in just a single sentence. Zhang Ling is a math master in the class. He is the best in every competition. He is domineering and no one in the class dares to mess with him. Although Sun Yu was unhappy, he could only bear it. In the next class, Lin Jiqing walked into the classroom with a modified trial, with a meaningful smile on her face. The results of this simulation competition are somewhat unexpected. She cleared her throat and glanced over the class. I will announce the top 3 first. Third place, Li Xiaoye, 85 points. Second place, 92 points. Everyone was surprised that a series of rustic words were heard in the classroom. Zhang Zi's face suddenly sank and glared at Lin Jiqing fiercely, as if he was suspicious of her judgment. First place, Lin Jiqing put it on, and the corner of her mouth slightly raised. Sun Yu, 100 points. What? The classroom exploded in an instant, and everyone turned to look at Sun Yu, with unbelievable eyes in their eyes. Sun Yu? That Sun Yu failed the exam on the usual time? Full score? Just kidding, even the slinger didn't do it. Sun Yu was also stunned, his heart beat so fast that it was about to pop out. He knew the system was helping a lot, but he didn't expect that the effect would be so exaggerated, and it would be so full. Impossible. Zhang Zi stood up suddenly, with anger in his voice. Teacher, there must be a problem with his test paper. How could he get the score? Did he copy it? Lin Jiqing looked slightly drowsy, her language was calm but unquestionable. Zhao Zi, every step of the trial paper I corrected was indecisive. Sun Yu's solution was even simpler than the standard answer, and I couldn't see any trace of the copy. If you have any differences, you can check the trial paper yourself. Zhang Zi gritted his teeth, his face turned blue, and he glared at Sun Yu fiercely, as if he wanted to swallow him alive. He finally sat down, but the 3 words "unwilling to accept" were clearly written in his eyes. Sun Yu, come and get the test paper. Lin Jiqing waved to him, her voice softly. Sun Yu stood up, his legs were a little soft. He walked to the lecture table and took the test paper. He looked down and found that he was very satisfied. He was still writing a small outstanding comment on the side in a red pen. He felt excited in his heart, and when he raised his head, he happened to meet Lin Jiqing's gaze. Sun Yu, I didn't expect you to have such potential, Lin Jiqing said lightly, with appreciation in her eyes. I'll go to the office after the class, and I want to tell you something. Okay. Sun Yu was busy, and his heart was in a hurry again. Teacher Lin is looking for him to fuck him? Is it hard to suspect that he cheated? As the next class began to pick up, Sun Yu walked out of the classroom with his classmates' surprised eyes and walked towards the teacher's office. On the way, Li Xiaopeng caught up with him and patted his shoulder excitedly. Awesome, Sun Yu. Full of points. How did you do it? Teach me quickly. It suddenly started. Sun Yu hesitated, but it was actually difficult to explain the system. Tisk, put it less, there must be some secret. Li Xiaopeng curled his lips, but his eyes were full of admiration. When he arrived at the office, Sun Yu knocked on the door and heard a sound of coming in. He pushed the door and saw Lin Jiqing sitting at the table, holding several competition episodes in front of him. Sun Yu, sit down. Lin Jiqing pointed to the chair opposite, with a gentle smile. Your performance today really surprised me. I read your test paper and my ideas for solving the problem are very unique, and I didn't even expect some places. Sun Yu shook her head embarrassedly. I just wrote it, it's good to be healthy. Flight won't make people get enough points. Lin Jiqing shook her head and said seriously, Sun Yu, I think you have the potential to compete. The school selection next month is an opportunity. If you can get a title, you can represent the school in provincial competitions, or even national competitions. This is an opportunity to change your fate. Sun Yu was stunned for a moment, and a heat surged in his heart. Change his fate, this is what he always wanted. The conditions in his family are not good, so my father was so tired that he couldn't straighten his waist every day to support him in order to read the book. If he can get a prize money through the competition or even get into a good university, he can help his family live a good life. But I'm afraid I can't do it, son, you said in a low voice, with a hint of inferiority in his voice. A person like Zhan Ling is better than me and has a stronger foundation than me. Son, competitions are not only based on talent, but also on hard work and methods. Lin Jiqing stopped him and said with a calm temperament, I can help you. Starting today, I will give you a solo guide after the class every day. I will provide you with a single guide to help you improve your basics and teach you competition skills. Do you want to try it? Sun Yu looked up at Lin Jiqing and found that her eyes were filled with encouragement and trust. At that moment, he felt like something was touched by his heart, and his nose felt sore and he almost couldn't help it. From small to old age, almost no one believed that he could do it, and he himself did not believe it. But now, Teacher Lin said she was willing to help him. Okay, I'm willing. Sun Yu pointed his head hard, his voice choked. Thank you, teacher, I will definitely work hard. Lin Jiqing smiled, stood up and walked to him, patted his shoulder lightly, then let's say it. Let's work together from today on. Sun Yu felt the warmth on his shoulders, and his heart beat a little faster. He secretly glanced at Lin Jiqing's face, which was so close that it was slightly red, and he quickly lowered his head to cover up his tightness. When he walked out of the office, an unprecedented aspiration for fighting ignited in Sun Yu's heart. He clenched his fists and swore secretly, no matter how difficult it is, he must prove himself in the competition. Not only for the sake of family, but also for the sake of innocent Teacher Lin's trust. However, just as he turned the corridor, a dissonant voice suddenly came from behind. Sun Yu, don't think that if you get a full score, you can really climb up to me. I will let you know who is the real king when you choose in the school. Sun Yu looked back and saw Zhan Zi leaning against the wall, holding his chest with both hands, his eyes full of snails. Sun Yu felt nervous, but immediately remembered Teacher Lin's words, gritted his teeth, and replied with a stern voice, then let's go and see. Zhan Zi sneered and turned away, leaving behind a disdainful back. Sun Yu looked at his back, and his heart was both tight and a little anticipated. The system's ability, the pressure of competition, and the encouragement of Teacher Lin, all of this made him feel that his life was about to begin to change. The rest of Xiang entered the office of the mathematical organization, and the orange light stretched out a long shadow on the desktop. Sun Yu sat in front of the small table, holding a thick collection of competitions in front of him, and quickly calculated on the draft paper. Lin Jiqing sat opposite him, looking down at his problem-solving process from time to time, occasionally pointing his head, with a faint smile on the corner of her mouth. Sun Yu, the idea of this topic is good, but you can optimize it here. Lin Jiqing stretched out her hand and pointed to a guide on the draft paper. The sound was gentle and clear. If you use the idea of the assist line, you will get the conclusion faster. Sun Yu looked up and found that Lin Jiqing's fingers were only a few centimeters away from his hand. A faint fragrance came from her, making his heart beat faster. He kept busy and covered his tightness. Oh, I understand, I'll try. He lowered his head and changed a few steps, and found that the problem-solving speed was much faster. In the brain, the system's prompt sound also prompted. It was detected that the host has mastered new problem-solving skills, and the mathematical competition genre has been upgraded to intermediate level, and the problem-solving accuracy rate has been increased to 95%. Sun Yu was excited in his heart, and the system's ability really made him feel better, but Teacher Lin's guidance was also very important. After these few days of training, his competition level suddenly improved and even some high-difficulty issues can be easily met. He even began to feel that he really had the opportunity to break out in the school selection competition. Sun Yu, you have made great progress recently. Lin Jiqing leaned on the back of the chair, crossing her hands in front of her chest, her eyes full of appreciation. I have read your training papers for the past few days, and I can basically settle at more than 90 points. The school selection competition will begin next week. Are you confident? Sun Yu held the pen tightly and clicked, yes. Teacher, I will definitely win the title, and I will be in charge of your help. Lin Jiqing smiled lightly, stood up and walked to the window, opened the window, letting the evening breeze blow in. That's good. But the competition not only tests the strength, but also tests the mind. When you encounter a high pressure, remember to relax yourself and don't force yourself too much. Sun Yu looked at her back, and the light of Xiang outlined her soft wheel, and a feeling that could not be said suddenly appeared in her heart. He quickly slammed his head and threw these miserable thoughts out of his brain. Well, I get it, teacher. Lin Jiqing turned around, blinked at him, and her voice was covered in a slight squid. Then let's go here today, you can go back and rest early. Come on tomorrow. Sun Yu packed up his things and stood up. His hand accidentally touched the corner of the table and a book fell to the ground. Lin Jiqing tilted her waist and squatted down quickly. The hands of the two accidentally touched each other. Sun Yu shrank his hand like a touch, and his face instantly red like a ripe tomato. Yes, I'm sorry, teacher. Lin Jiqing was stunned for a moment, then laughed out loud, with a crisp voice. It's okay, Sun Yu, why are you tightening? I won't eat you. Sun Yu lowered his head, hesitated and couldn't speak. His heart was like a drum. He knew he shouldn't have these ideas. Teacher Lin was his instructor, but every time he got in close contact with her, he could not control his heartbeat. When he walked out of the office, Sun Yu patted his face and muttered to himself, Sun Yu, don't think about it. Teacher Lin just cared about you, don't be too sentimental. However, this vague atmosphere was like a small seed, sprouting quietly in his heart. He slammed his head and forced himself to turn his attention to the competition. The school selection competition is next week, and he must do his best. Turning around, the day for the school selection competition has come. The school's report hall was temporarily changed to an exam venue. The competition selection of 3 subjects, mathematics, physics, and chemistry, was filled with intense breath. Sun Yu, I heard that you are very crazy recently. Have you scored a lot of points in the simulation game? A boy wearing a glass next to him came over, with a few points in his language curiosity. Today's selection competition has a 3-wheeled elimination system. The first wheel is a test, the second wheel is a field of explanation, and the third wheel is a team confrontation. Are you really sure? Sun Yu smiled hard. If you do your best, I have no bottom line. TSK, what are you wearing? Another student interrupted, speaking sour. I heard that you have a good relationship with Teacher Lin. I'm very good at teaching after class every day. It's hard to make progress so fast. Sun Yu's face changed and he wanted to explain it, but he heard a sneer from the front row. What's the relationship? Maybe I'm copying it. I heard that someone was sneaky when he was taking the exam, and the answer was unclear. Sun Yu looked at him in the sound and it turned out to be a slap. He sat in the front row, crossing his legs, looking at Sun Yu with disdain. Several followers around him also made a fuss. The sound was not loud or small, just enough that everyone around him could hear it. Check it. Is it true or false? Why could Sun Yu suddenly get a full score? There must be a problem. The argument pierced Sun Yu's ear like a knife. He clenched his fist and his face was red, and he couldn't respond in a single sentence. He knew that he had achieved results through systems and hard work, but how could he solve this problem? When others say that, they will only think that he is a crazy person. The first round trial begins. Please take your candidates. The voice of the supervisor interrupted the discussion. Sun Yu gritted his teeth and forced himself to calm down. He told himself that now is not a time of anxiety. Only by proving himself with practical strength can he block the mouths of these people. After the test started, Sun Yu quickly entered the state. The system's ability made his problem-solving speed amazing, and the prompt sound kept coming from the brain. Check high-difficulty questions, unlock the mathematical competition high-level mode, and increase the problem-solving speed to 500%. The questions were solved easily under his pen, and even some pressure questions were solved. He wrote the complete answer in just a few minutes. In less than an hour, he finished the entire test paper. When he looked up, he saw that most of the candidates around him were still thinking hard, and even sweated on the slap. After handing over the paper, Sun Yu sat outside the exam and waited for the results to be announced, and he was still a little nervous. Although he believed that his answer was fine, the spread of rumors covered him like a shadow, making him feel breathless. The first round of results was announced. The responsible teacher walked onto the stage with a list, with a few points in his language. The first place in the mathematical group, Sun Yu, scored 150 points. Second place, runner, 138 points. The audience was shocked, and everyone turned to look at Sun Yu, with surprise and suspicion in their eyes. Zhang Zi's face was so blue that he glared at Sun Yu fiercely, muttered something in his mouth, and then turned away from the exam. Sun Yu, it's so bad. It's a lot. Li Xiaopeng ran over and patted his shoulder excitedly. I'll say nothing now. Sun Yu smiled hard, but found that the discussions around him did not decrease due to the results, but became even more harsh. Full scores? This is too distant. It would be difficult for him to pass the exam before. Zhang Zi said it right, there must be a problem. Maybe he knew the question in advance. Sun Yu's heart sank, and these words pierced into his heart like a slight. He knew that relying on single results would not stop these people's mouths. When the second round of questions is being solved on the spot, he must show his true skills and make everyone convinced. The second round of on-site questions was held in the afternoon, and the exam was temporarily changed to a small lecture station. The selectors went on-site questions to solve them, explain the questions on-site and explain their ideas. The review committee scored based on the resolution speed and logic clarity. This competition method not only tests practicality, but also tests psychological quality. If you have any slightest, you may make mistakes. Sun Yu drew a few proof questions, which was quite difficult. Even the reviewer teacher couldn't help but look at him more, as if he wanted to see how many real skills this full black horse had. He walked up to the lecture stage, holding the pink in his hand, his heart beating very fast. Off the stage, Zhang Zi sat in the first row, holding his chest with both hands, a sneer on the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were full of sting. Sun Yu took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. The sound of the system in the brain was appropriate. Check the on-site problem-solving environment, start the advanced logical analysis mode, and the host can directly obtain the best solution. Sun Yu closed his eyes, and a solution to the problem quickly emerged in the sea of brain. He held the pencil tightly and wrote the first step of the guidance on the blackboard. The sound was a little shaky, but it was still clear. The key to this topic is the structural auxiliary line. We first draw a line from A to C, and then. With his explanation, the blackboard's guidance has been progressing step by step, and every step is logical and stern, and it is indescribable. The audience members had the frequency points, and several classmates couldn't help but applaud. The face of the hair became increasingly difficult to see, and the tight fists seemed to explode at any time. The final conclusion is that the angle ABC is equal to the angle CDE, and the certificate is completed. Sun Yu wrote the last step, turned around and looked down at the audience, with a decisive sound in his voice. This is my solution. Please correct me by the teacher and classmates. The audience was silent for a second, and a hot palm burst out immediately. The teacher of the evaluation committee stood up and admired her face. Sun Yu, your solution is very wonderful, your ideas are simple, and your logic is indecisive. I will give you a lot of points. Sun Yu felt excited and finally smiled on his face. He looked at Zhang Zi and found that the other party's face was as dark as the bottom, and his eyes were filled with resentment. Who dares to say that Sun Yu's level is to copy it? That's right, you can get a lot of points if you solve the problem on the spot. This is the real skill. The discussion changed its direction, and the haze in Sun Yu's heart finally dissipated a little. When he walked down the lecture, Li Xiaopeng came over and shouted excitedly, "Awesome, Sun Yu. You are just tying your face and showing off your hair." Sun Yu smiled, not saying much. He knew that this was just the beginning, and Zhang Ling would not let him go so easily, and the next third-round team would face him, and there might be even bigger challenges. The third-team confrontation was held the next day. Sun Yu was assigned to a team of average strength, and Zhang Zi led several competition giants to form a dream team. The competition rules are that each team has a question leaked, the other team will solve the questions on the spot, the answer will be scored, the answer will be deducted points, and the team with the highest score will be ranked first. On the first round, the team of Zhang Zi took the lead in the question. The topic was a very complicated number of promotional questions, and even the reviewers in the audience couldn't help but be amazed. Zhang Zi looked at Sun Yu proudly, as if he had prepared this move long ago. Sun Yu's teammates were very familiar with each other, and it was obvious that no one could explain this issue. Sun Yu gritted his teeth, stood up and said, "I'll try." He walked onto the stage, and the system's prompt sound came up again. After detecting the ultra-high difficulty question, start the mathematical competition nation peak mode, and increase the problem-solving speed to 800%. With the help of the system, Sun Yu quickly clarified his ideas and wrote the guidance process on the blackboard. Zhang Zi's face in the audience became increasingly difficult to see. When Sun Yu wrote the final answer, he couldn't help but stand up. "This is impossible. It took me an hour to solve this question. How could he get it done in 10 minutes? Teacher, he must have cheated." There was another discussion in the audience, and Sun Yu's heart sank. He knew that Zhang Lingzhu was deliberately provoking trouble, trying to put him in a crisis of trust again. "Zhang Zi, do you have any evidence?" The teacher of the evaluation committee was browsed, with a disgusting expression in his language. Sun Yu's answering process is on the blackboard, and every step is clear. Any differences you have can point them out on the spot. He spoke without saying a word, his face turned red, and he could only sit down in disappointment. The audience heard a lot of hearing the pressure, and Sun Yu's heart finally released a little. He looked at Zhang Zi, his eyes a little more determined. "Do you want to use this method to suppress me?" "No door." Finally, Sun Yu's team successfully advanced with his outstanding performance, and although the team of Zhang Zi also advanced, his face was hardly visible. After the selection competition ended, Sun Yu thoughtfully won the first place in the math group and became one of the candidates representing the school to participate in the provincial competition. His name began to be passed on in school, some admired and some were jealous, but no matter what, he eventually turned from an inconspicuous ordinary student to a competitive black horse in everyone's eyes. In the evening, Sun Yu came to Lin Jiqing's office again and prepared to continue the coursework. When he pushed the door open, he found Lin Jiqing leaning against the window, holding a cup of coffee in his hand, his eyes a little dazed. "Teacher, I'm here," Sun Yu said lightly, breaking the silence. Lin Jiqing returned to her senses and turned her head to smile at him. "Sun Yu, I've heard it all. When you were answering the topic on the spot, the reviewers all said that you had a clear idea, which really gave me a long face." Sun Yu shook his head embarrassedly. It's all taught by the teacher. I just follow your ideas." Lin Jiqing put down her coffee cup, walked over and sat next to him, speaking softly. "Sun Yu, you don't have to be so stupid. I see your efforts, and I understand your pressure. When you talk about those words today, you must feel uncomfortable, right?" Sun Yu was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect Lin Jiqing to mention this matter. He lowered his head and was silent for a while. His voice was a little low. "Well, actually, I care a lot about how others look at me." Lin Jiqing looked at him, her eyes softer. She patted his shoulder lightly, and the sound was warm. "Sun Yu, I believe in you. Being successful is your own. It doesn't matter what others say, what matters is that you know how much you have paid. Today you prove yourself on stage, and that's all." Sun Yu looked up at her and found that her face was very close to her, so close that she could see the light in her eyes clearly. His heart beat faster, and he quickly moved his video line and said in a daze, thank you, teacher. I will continue to work hard." Lin Jiqing smiled lightly and stood up. "That's up. Next is a provincial competition, which is much more difficult than the school's selection. We have to win more. I will help you develop a new training plan and win a good ranking in the provincial competition." "What's the point?" Sun Yu pointed his head hard, and a sense of struggle arose in his heart. "Okay. Teacher, I will definitely not disappoint you." However, watching Lin Jiqing's back busy searching for information, there was a little more confusion in Sun Yu's heart. He knew that his feelings for teacher Lin seemed to be not purely a teacher's life, but this thought made him feel uneasy. He clenched his fists tightly and secretly told himself, Sun Yu, it's not the time to think about these things now. Competition is your goal, don't distract yourself. The night is getting deeper, and the lights in the office are warm and soft. Sun Yu was talking on the topic with a low head, and Lin Jiqing occasionally pointed out a few sentences. The atmosphere between the two was calm and comfortable. Sun Yu knew that the road ahead was still very long, and the provincial competition, national competition, and even the opportunity to change his fate were waiting for him. And he is ready to meet all challenges. The provincial competition venue is set up in a key high school in the provincial city. The huge sports hall has been temporarily transformed into an examination venue. Top students from all over the province gather together, and the air is filled with a heavy smell of ignition. Sun Yu was wearing a school uniform and carrying an old bookcase on his back. He stood at the entrance, looking at the thrilling competition, and was both excited and tight. This was his first time participating in such a large-scale competition, which represented not only himself, but also the school, and even Lin Jiqing's expectations for him. Sun Yu, come here. Nowhere far away, Li Xiaopeng ran over and was full of joy. Look, our school has sent 3 people. You are the top picker, and the principal said that this time it's all up to you to fight for us. Sun Yu smiled hard and felt uneasy. Don't say anything, I'm just here to try water, so it's not that bad. Tisk, what's the low-key installation? The school's picking will be used to suppress Zhanlu. Li Xiaopeng's face was full of admiration, and then he lowered his voice, but I heard that Zhanlu has come this time, and he also said that you have to be careful when you step on you in the competition. Sun Yu felt a tight heart, his eyes swept over the crowd, and he saw Zhan Zizi's figure nowhere. He was wearing a famous brand sports suit and surrounded several companions, smiling loudly, and always looked at Sun Yu. That look seemed to have locked the treasure long ago. Host, the high-pressure environment was detected, and the competitive competition system has entered the standby state and the advanced mode can be activated at any time. In the brain, the cold sound of the system sounded, which made Sun Yu feel a little relieved. He clenched his fists and secretly told himself, no matter how Zhan Zi provokes trouble, he must do his best in this holiday game. The competition is divided into 3 stages, initial competition, reunion and final competition, and the 3 subjects of mathematics, physics and chemistry are held separately. Sun Yu mainly studies mathematics, and the first game is a test. The difficulty of the topic is 1 file higher than that of the school's selection. However, with the help of the system and the guidance of Lin Jiqing during this period, he still got a full score and successfully upgraded the game. After the news broke, people began to discuss the black horse that was not known as Black Horse, and the face of Zhan Zi became increasingly difficult to see. On the day of the game, there were crowds of people outside the game, and Sun Yu was blocked in the corridor by Zhan Zi. Sun Yu, did you hear that you are getting full again in the first game? Zhan Zi put his hands in his pocket, and a sneer was sneering at the corner of his mouth. The sound was so loud that everyone around him could hear it. I'm really curious, what did you like to do this? It would be better to have emotion again, so you know the question in advance, right? Sun Yu's face changed, he clenched his fists tightly, and he was angry. Spyin', if you have evidence, take it out, don't say anything without evidence. My achievements are achieved by myself. What does it have to do with you? Try hard? Laugh. Zhan Zizi sneered, leaned closer, and lowered his voice. Sun Yu, don't think you can keep putting it on. The game is not a selection at the school. The game is a recap. No one can help you cheat. At that time, I want to see what full points you can get. Several selectors around heard this and began to speak privately, looking back at Sun Yu, full of suspicion. Sun Yu felt like he was thorned in his heart, his face was red, and he couldn't respond in a single sentence. He knew that Zhan Zizi was deliberately shaking his mind, but these words hit what he cared about the most. Host, I have detected the storm. It is recommended to remain calm and focus on the competition. The sound of the system started to sound appropriately. Sun Yu took a deep breath and replied with a hard head, "Shan Pin, let's see it on the competition." "I want to see it, it's your stubborn mouth or my stubborn strength." Zhan Zi was stunned for a moment, then sneered and turned away with the man. Sun Yu looked at his back, feeling both angry and a little uneasy. The current problem of the recap is to open the competition, choose the wheel to go on stage to solve the problem, explain the problem on the spot and explain the ideas, and any mistakes will be amplified, and the pressure will be much greater than that of the pen. Although he has the system to help, the strength of the sword cannot be underestimated. This battle is definitely not easy to fight. After the game started, the question that Sun Yu drew was a mathematical modeling question, which was moderately difficult. With the system's high-level logical analysis model, he quickly clarified his ideas and wrote the guidance process on the blackboard. Although the sound was a bit tight, the logic was clear and he won the unanimous praise from the review committee. When the sound of his palms sounded, he relaxed and glanced at the roar. He found that the other party's face had not changed much, but his eyes were even more sunny. When Zhan Ling came to the stage, the questions he drew were obviously more difficult, but with his solid foundation and calm mind, he answered the same perfectly, and even deliberately added some tricks to show off his skills during the explanation, which made the audience startle. After the explanation, he threw a gaze in the direction of Sun Yu, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised, as if he had expected that he would have been under pressure. Showing the level of the siege is indeed worthy of last year's provincial games. Although Sun Yu is not bad, he is still a little bit worse than Zhan Er. The discussions in the audience made Sun Yu feel nervous. He knew that Zhan Zizi was using real strength to suppress him, and at the same time he was also using words and atmosphere to sway his confidence. He clenched his fists and secretly told himself, he cannot be influenced by him, and he must be more stable in the next game. When the results of the game were announced, Sun Yu ranked first with a slight advantage. After that, both of them successfully advanced to the game. Although he became the leader, Sun Yu didn't have much joy in his heart, because he knew that Zhan Zi's challenge would only become more and more intense, and the victory was the real tough battle. That night, Sun Yu returned to the Fenghuan next to the competition and lay on the bed and turned around. The pressure of the competition was the pressure of the competition. Zhan Zi's sarcasm, the discussions in the audience, and even whether he can withstand the difficulty of winning the game, all made him feel like a big stone was pressed down on his heart. At this moment, the phone suddenly started to rise, and Lin Jiqing's name was displayed on the screen. "Sun Yu, haven't you been sleeping yet?" Lin Jiqing's voice came from the listening tube, with a gentle and caring concern. "I heard that you performed well in the recap, why don't you hear it too excited?" Sun Yu felt warm in his heart, sat up, and said in a low voice, "Teacher, I feel a little stressed. Zhan Zi has been picking me, saying that I have problems in my career, and that the game will reveal my true colors. I know I shouldn't care about these things, but I just can't help but think about it." The phone was silent for a while, and then Lin Jiqing said lightly, "Sun Yu, competitions not only test knowledge, but also test mentality. When you say those words, you just want to make you trouble. The more you care, the more proud he will be. You have to remember that I see your strength. Why do others say it doesn't matter? What is important is that you believe in yourself." Sun Yu held the phone tightly, his eyes felt a little hot. "Teacher, thank you. I will try my best to adjust my mind. Yeah, I'll go to the game to cheer you up tomorrow." Lin Jiqing's voice was filled with a smile, "So don't let me down. Get some rest early and make a good start in the game." After shutting down the phone, Sun Yu looked at the dark ceiling, and the pressure in his heart seemed to be lessening. Lin Jiqing's words were like a stimulus that made him rekindle his ambition. He closed his eyes and swore to himself, no matter how difficult it is, he must fight as hard as possible. On the day of the competition, there were no private seats in the competition. Many teachers and students from schools came to watch the competition, and even media reporters took photos. Sun Yu sat on the picking seat, his palms were sweating slightly, and his eyes were unconsciously swept towards the audience. Sure enough, in the front position, Lin Jiqing was wearing a white shirt and sat there quietly, throwing an encouragement smile at him. Sun Yu's heartbeat was a beat faster, and he quickly moved his video, forcing himself to focus on the competition. The game is divided into 2 rounds. The first round is a personal round. The picker will come to the stage to solve the problem alone. The second round is a pair of people fighting against each other. The picker will directly win the championship. The personal competition questions are extremely difficult, and each question is close to the level of national competitions. Sun Yu-hyun successfully solved the first 2 questions with the help of the system and his own efforts, and was temporarily ranked first. However, the third question made the entire game fall silent. This is a very obvious evidence question, involving advanced mathematics knowledge points. Even the review committee teacher couldn't help but look at it, and it seemed that this difficult question would come up. The players in the audience went on stage to try one by one, but all failed without exception, and some people couldn't even write the first step of the guidance. When Sun Yu came to the stage, the discussions in the audience were getting bigger and bigger. This topic is too distorted. Who can solve it? Sun Yu is about to fall this time. No matter how bad he is, he will never be able to get a college knowledge. Sun Yu stood in front of the blackboard, holding a pink in his hand, and sweat was already emerging from his brain. He looked at the question with his head down, and the brain was blank. Even though the system's prompt sound kept rising, check the super topic, start the peak mode, and the problem-solving speed was increased to 1000%, but he still couldn't find the entry point. The difficulty of this question is completely beyond his cognition. As time passed, the voice of the discussions in the audience became more and more harsh. Zhang Zi sat on the pickup seat, with a sneer on the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were filled with mockery. Sun Yu's heart beats faster and faster, his palms are covered in sweat, and his hands holding the pink pen are shaking slightly. He even began to doubt himself, wondering if he really couldn't do it. Is it hard to say that he is not worthy of standing on this stage at all? Sun Yu, it's still 3 minutes. When the time comes, it's time to step down. The voice of the appraisal teacher came from the audience, like a death talisman, which instantly made Sun Yu's pressure reach the top. At this moment, his eyes swept over the audience inadvertently and fell on Lin Jiqing. She was looking at him quietly, with no disappointment or urging in her eyes, only full of trust and encouragement. At that moment, Sun Yu suddenly flashed through the sea of his brain. Lin Jiqing once said, "The competition is not only about practical skills, but also about mentality. You must believe in yourself." Sun Yu closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and forced himself to calm down. In the brain, the system's voice sounded again. The host's situation was detected to be stable, and the super question analysis module was solved to provide the best solution. A spiritual light flashed through Sun Yu's brain. He suddenly opened his eyes, held the pink pen, and wrote the first step on the blackboard. The key to this topic is to reduce the bandwidth. We first transform the 3-dimensional plane into a 2-dimensional plane, and then introduce the ultimate idea. His voice became more and more stable, and the guidance steps became clearer. The discussions in the audience stopped and everyone stared at the guidance process on the blackboard. Even the reviewer couldn't help but stand up, his eyes filled with surprise. The final conclusion is that the area of the triangle ABC is equal to the set value, and the certificate is complete. Sun Yu wrote the last step, turned around and looked down at the audience, with a trembling sound in his voice, but it was more certain. "This is my solution, please correct me," by the teacher of the review committee. The audience was silent for a second, and a thunderous sound suddenly erupted. The teacher of the evaluation committee pointed and admired her face. "Sun Yu, your solution is very wonderful, your ideas are unique, and even exceed the requirements of the question itself. I will give you a lot of points." Sun Yu felt excited in his heart, his legs were a little soft. He looked at Zhang Zi and found that the other party's face was already blue, and his tight fists seemed to explode at any time, but in the end he didn't say a word, so he could only lower his head in disappointment. Sun Yu's level is so simple and striking. Even the super problem can be solved, who dares to say he can't? The discussions in the audience completely changed their direction, and the haze in Sun Yu's heart slammed. When he walked off the stage, Li Xiaopeng rushed over and shouted excitedly, "Awesome, Sun Yu. You have just slammed Zhang Zi's face. Sun Yu smiled and his eyes swept to the audience again. Lin Jiqing was giving him a thumbs up, and the smile on the corner of her mouth was warm and proud. Sun Yu's heartbeat was beat faster, and he quickly lowered his head to cover up his emotions, but his heart felt as sweet as honey. After the personal competition, Sun Yu ranked first with absolute advantages and ranked second. Next is a two-person confrontation game. According to the results of the draw, Sun Yu and Zhang Zi were divided into a group and will directly fight in the last round to compete for the championship. As soon as the news came out, the whole game was in full swing. Everyone knows that the grudge between these two people is no longer a secret, and this dispute is undoubtedly the biggest point of the game. That night, Sun Yu returned to the Bing Pavilion and couldn't sleep no matter how hard he was. Tomorrow is the final battle with Zhang Zizi. Although he has the system to help, Zhang Zizi's strength and heart attack make him feel stressed. At this moment, the door was suddenly knocked. When he opened the door, he found that Lin Jiqing was standing at the door, holding a piece of information in his hand. "Teacher? It's too late, why are you here?" Sun Yu was stunned for a moment, and hurriedly let her come in. Lin Jiqing smiled and put the information on the table. "I see that your condition is not very good after the game today. I guess you may not be able to sleep, so I came to chat with you. These are mock issues against the game. I just sorted out. Let's take a look together." Sun Yu felt warm in his heart, and he clicked a little, and the two sat at the table and began to discuss the topic. Lin Jiqing's voice was gentle and clear. Whenever Sun Yu encountered a jammed shell, she could help him clarify his thoughts in the simplest way. As time passed, the night became deeper and deeper, and the atmosphere in the room became lighter and lighter. "Sun Yu, when I was solving that super topic on stage today, I really felt a little worried about you." Lin Jiqing leaned on the back of the chair, with a touch of emotion in her voice, "but I am really proud to see you stick to it in the end. You are stronger than I thought." Sun Yu looked at the data with his head down, his fingers clenched unconsciously, and his voice was a little low. "Teacher, thank you. If you hadn't encouraged me all the time, I might have given up. Today on stage, I almost collapsed, but when I thought of what you said, I told myself that I could not disappoint you." Lin Jiqing was stunned for a moment, and immediately smiled lightly, with a softer look in her eyes. "Sun Yu, I am also very happy to have such progress. In fact, teaching you these topics is also a growth for me. I hope you can go further, not only for the competition, but also for yourself." Sun Yu looked up at her and found that her face looked particularly gentle under the light, and a sudden urge broke out in her heart. He plucked up his courage and his voice was a little trembling. "Teacher, I really appreciate you. Not only because of the competition, but also, in your trust in me. I have never thought that anyone would believe that I can do it. If one day I can win the national championship, I hope you can be proud of me." After saying that, Sun Yu was stunned, his face instantly red like a ripe tomato. He quickly lowered his head, his heart beat so fast that it was about to pop out, and he secretly regretted why he would say this. Lin Jiqing was also stunned for a moment, and immediately smiled lightly, with a warm voice. "Sun Yu, thank you for your words. I believe you can do it. When you win the championship, I will be the first to applaud you." Sun Yu felt excited, but also a little disappointed. He knew that his feelings for Teacher Lin were not purely pure, but he also understood that some boundaries could not be crossed. He took a deep breath, forced himself to put these thoughts down, and smiled reluctantly. "Well, teacher, I'll be cheering." Lin Jiqing stood up and patted his shoulder. "Then let's take a break soon. There will be tough battles to fight tomorrow. I'll go back first, don't stand it too late." Sun Yu pointed at her head and watched her back disappear from the door, and her heart couldn't calm down for a long time. He knew that tomorrow's dispute with Zhang Zizi was not only for the champion, but also to prove himself and to be innocent of Lin Jiqing's expectations. The night is deeper, and outside the window of the Binghuan, the city lights are bright and quiet. Sun Yu sat at the table, holding the information left by Lin Jiqing in his hand, his eyes firmly. He knew that the next match would be the final result between him and the raider. No matter what the result is, He has to do his best to make everyone who doubts him shut up, and Lin Jiqing can see that his efforts are not in vain. On the other side of the game, Zhang Zi sat in the room. His eyes were cold, holding a paper full of strategy in his hand, and a sneer was hanging on the corner of his mouth. He said in a low voice, "Sun Yu, tomorrow, I will let you know who is the real king. No matter what means you have, I will never lose in this game." The national competition day finally came. The competition was set up in the ceremony of a top university in the capital. The magnificent venue was decorated particularly heavy. The audience was inspiring. Not only were there players and teachers from all over the country, but also media reporters and live broadcasters on the stage. The atmosphere was so lively that it seemed to be able to come out of the water. Sun Yu was wearing a simple school uniform and sat in the pickup seat, sweating slightly, and his eyes unconsciously swept towards the audience, looking for the familiar figure. Sure enough, in the front position, Lin Jiqing was sitting there quietly, wearing a clean blue dress, and threw a warm smile at him, her eyes full of encouragement. Sun Yu felt warm in his heart, and his tight emotions were slightly relieved. He clenched his fists and secretly told himself, today, no matter how difficult it is, he will do his best. This game is not only for the championship, but also to prove himself, to be honest with Lin Jiqing's trust, and to make those who once looked down on him shut up. The National High School Students' Academic Competition is finalizing, and the mathematical team's confrontation competition is now beginning. The host's loud voice spread throughout the audience through the McKeeper's style, and a warm sound burst out from the audience. According to the competition, the game adopts a one-to-one confrontation mode. Sun Yu and Zhang Zizi are the provincial champions, and directly in the final match, the winner will win the championship. This competition was regarded by everyone as a summit match, not only because of the two people's strength, but also because the grudges between them have long been spread throughout the competition. Zhang Ling took the lead on stage, wearing a customized sportswear, with a confident smile on her face, and shrugged at the audience, causing a scream and a sound. He was last year's provincial AFC. He has a strong foundation and a strong ambition. Many people privately believe that he is the popular choice for this championship. Zhang Zi walked to Sun Yu's body and deliberately suppressed his voice and sneered, "Sun Yu, today is your end. I will let everyone see clearly that you are not worthy of standing on this stage at all." Sun Yu's face darkened, but he immediately took a deep breath and replied with a hard head, "Zhang Zi, the skill in his mouth is useless. Let's see the real seal on the game." He knew that Zhang Zi was deliberately thinking of his mind, but he would not be affected by this little player again. Today, he wants to speak with strength. The competition officially begins, and the first round is to answer the questions raised by the host within 30 seconds. The answer is extra points, the answer is wrong or the score is deducted in time. The test is not only knowledge preparation, but also reaction speed and psychological quality. The host's command said, the question was quickly displayed on the large screen, which was a problem about the number of columns of push, and it was quite difficult. "Sun Yu, please answer." The host's voice sounded, and the prompt sound of the system in the sea of Sun Yu's brain started almost at the same time. Check the quick answer environment, start the instant logic analysis mode, and increase the problem-solving speed to 1000%. He quickly clarified his thoughts and answered, the formula for this question is n equals 2n1 plus 3n, and the answer is n equals 5n1. Correct. Sun Yu adds 1 point. The host announced the results, and the audience heard a lot. Sun Yu relaxed, glanced at Zhang Zi, and found that the other party's face changed slightly, but soon returned to his coldness. When Zhang Zi gave the answer, he quickly gave the correct answer. The two of them came to me in front of me, and the match was in line, and the score was very tight. Everyone in the audience held their breath, and the atmosphere was very intense, and even the host couldn't help but sigh. The performances of these two candidates are really wonderful, and they are of equal strength. Let's wait and see who can laugh to the end. However, as the difficulty of the topic gradually increases, the pressure force begins to appear. His reaction speed was a little slower, and once he even exceeded his time due to his watch, deducting 1 point. With the help of the system and the guidance of Lin Jiqing during this period, Sun Yu calmly broke out and gradually opened the gap of 1 point. At the end of the first round, Sun Yu took the lead with a slight advantage, and the sound of the audience almost overturned the roof. Zhang Zi's face was blue and glared at Sun Yu fiercely, muttering something in his mouth, but Sun Yu ignored him and just lowered his head to adjust his breathing, preparing for the next round of competition. He knew that the real tough battle was still behind. The second round is the on-site solution. The candidates need to draw on the spot, complete the promotion on the blackboard and explain the ideas. The review committee scores comprehensively based on the resolution speed, logic clarity and explanation quality. This round tests the player's comprehensive ability, and the pressure is greater than the quick answer, because everyone can see every step of your operation, and any slight mistake will be magnified. Sun Yu took the lead and drew a question about what probability it was. The difficulty was extremely high, and even the audience in the audience couldn't help but exclaim. Zhang Zizi sat on the pickup seat, a sneer was hanging on the corner of his mouth, his eyes full of expectation, as if he wanted Sun Yu to be so angry. Sun Yu stood in front of the blackboard, his palms were covered in sweat, and the sound of the system in the brain was heard. Detect the high difficulty question, start the peak analysis mode to provide the best solution. He closed his eyes, quickly sorted out his thoughts, tightened his pencil, and wrote the first step on the blackboard. The key to this question is to convert many graphics into coordinate system. We set the original point of the coordinate system first. Although his voice was a little shaky, the logic was clear and the steps were serious. The audience even couldn't help but applauded. As the promotion progresses step by step, Sun Yu's confidence gradually rebounded. When he wrote the final answer, the voice was completely stable, so, the probability value is 1/3, and the promotion is completed. A hot voice broke out from the audience. The teacher of the evaluation committee stood up and admired her face. Sun Yu, your solution is very wonderful, your ideas are unique, and your explanation is very clear. I will give you 9.8 points, which is close to full points. Sun Yu was excited in his heart, bowed to the review committee, and then walked off the stage. He secretly glanced at Lin Jiqing and found that she was giving him a thumbs up, with a smile full of pride. His heart beat faster and he quickly lowered his head to cover up his feelings, but his heart felt as sweet as honey. When Zhang Ling came to the stage, the question he drew was equally difficult, and it was a complex function inequality question. He stood in front of the blackboard, his hand holding the pink pen shook slightly, obviously a little tight. Although his foundation is very strong and the promotion process is complete, his explanation is fast and his logic is a bit confusing. In the end, the review committee gave him 9.2 points, 0.6 points lower than Sun Yu. The discussions in the audience began to sound, and many people began to re-evaluate the direction of this competition. When Zhang Ling walked off the stage, his face was blue and glared at Sun Yu fiercely, his eyes filled with resentment, but Sun Yu just calmly looked at him without saying a word. He knew that now is not the time for quarrels, and the real struggle is still in the last round. The third round is the final confrontation. The two of them came on stage at the same time to answer a very difficult pressure question together. Whoever got the correct answer and explained it clearly first, and who would win directly. This topic involves the intersection of multiple subjects, and the difficulty is varied. Even the reviewers couldn't help but look at it. It was obvious that such a topic would occur in the finals. As soon as the topic came out, the audience calmed down in an instant. Everyone held their breath and their eyes were tightly locked on the two people on the stage. Sun Yu and Zhang Erzi each accounted for half of the blackboard, and their hands holding the pink pen were shaking slightly. The system's prompt sound came from Sun Yu's brain. After detecting the ultimate difficulty question, the limit analysis mode is activated, and the solution speed is increased to the extreme limit value, providing the best solution. Sun Yu quickly clarified his thoughts, and the pink in his hand quickly wrote the guidance step on the blackboard. Each step was clear and unmistakable, and the logic was serious. He occasionally raised his head and looked at the wizard, and found that sweat had appeared on the other party's head. The speed of pushing was obviously slowing down. He even stopped a few times to wipe away the wrong steps, which was a little panicked. As time passed, Sun Yu's guidance was approaching the end of the sound, and the striking step was still stuck in the middle, making the face become increasingly difficult to see. Finally, Sun Yu wrote the last step, turned to look at the review committee, and the voice was determined. My answer is that the minimum value of the function is -2. After the promotion is completed, please verify by the review committee teacher. The teacher of the evaluation committee quickly checked his promotion process, and then stood up and was shocked. Sun Yu, the answer is correct. The promotion process is indecisive and clear, and we unanimously agree that you are the winner of this competition. Congratulations, you have won the National High School Mathematics Competition Championship. The audience was boiling in an instant, and the palms and cries were almost overturning the roof. Sun Yu was stunned on the stage, his brain was blank until the host walked over and patted his shoulder and announced loudly, "Let us congratulate Sun Yu, a black horse player from an ordinary high school, used his efforts and strength to create a miracle and become the national champion." Sun Yu only came back to his senses, his eyes were a little hot. He turned to look at the audience and found that Lin Jiqing was standing up and applauding, her eyes filled with relief and pride. He felt a little excited and almost couldn't hold back his eyes. He knew that at this moment, he finally did it, from an inconspicuous ordinary student to a gold champion. Zhang Zi stood on the other side of the stage, his face was white, and his hands holding the pink collar were hanging down weakly. He looked at Sun Yu's guidance on the blackboard, and his eyes were filled with incredible, but more of a deep sense of frustration. He was silent for a long time, and finally walked to Sun Yu and said in a low voice, "Sun Yu, I've lost. I admit that your strength is stronger than mine. I was wrong before, I'm sorry." Sun Yu was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect Zhang Zi to take the initiative to apologize. He looked at the other party's lowered head, with a little more complicated look in his eyes, but he immediately pointed the head and said calmly, "Forget the past, let's go. The competition is fair. As long as you work hard, everyone has the chance." Zhang Zi bit his lip, and said nothing more, but just bowed slightly to him, then walked off the stage. His back looked a little lonely. The audience watched this scene, and the controversy gradually calmed down, and many people began to look at Sun Yu in admiration. On the winning stage, Sun Yu stood under the concentrating lights with a golden light and a thunderous palm and countless flashlights. He looked down at the prize cup, feeling mixed emotions in his heart. A few months ago, he was still an ordinary student who had difficulty passing the exam. His family was not in good condition, his father worked on the construction site, and his mother was in poor health. He couldn't even imagine that he could be what he is today. Now, he has stood on the highest stage in the country, becoming the champion, the pride of his family, and the legend of the school. "Sun Yu, let's say a few words." The host sent McGrath to him, and his voice was filled with encouragement. Sun Yu took a deep breath and tightened the max dial. His voice was a little trembling but full of sincerity. "Thank you everyone, thank you for the teacher of the evaluation committee for giving me this opportunity. I have never thought I could get to this point, but I know that nothing is empty. I want to thank my family, who have always supported me, and my teacher. Especially Teacher Lin. If it weren't for her encouragement and help, I might have given up. Today's champions are not only mine, but also theirs." The audience burst out with a sound of her pussy again. Sun Yu's eyes swept over the audience and fell on Lin Jiqing. She found that her eyes were slightly red and there was a warm smile on the corners of her mouth. He felt a palpitation in his heart, and he quickly lowered his head to cover up his emotions, but at that moment, he knew that the most important thing about him along the way was not just the champions, but also those who supported him. After the game ended, Sun Yu was surrounded by a group of reporters and classmates outside the game. Questions and congratulations followed one after another. He was overwhelmed and could only answer one by one, and the smile on his face never stopped. It was not until the crowd dispersed that he finally relaxed, walked out of the competition with his bag on his back, and was ready to go back to the shopping mall to rest. "Sun Yu." A familiar voice came from behind. When he looked back, he found that Lin Jiqing was walking towards him, holding a bouquet of flowers in his hand, and his smile was gentle and sarcastic. "Congratulations, champion. I have said a long time ago that you can do it. Sun Yu took the flower and his face turned red in an instant, and he stammered, "Thank you, teacher. I really didn't expect you to win the championship. It was all you taught." Lin Jiqing smiled lightly and shook her head. "Sun Yu, don't always push the merits to me. This is your own efforts, I just helped you a little. When you stand on the stage today, it's really dazzling, and I'm very proud of you." Sun Yu looked at the flowers with his head down, and his heart seemed to be filled with something, warm and a little sour. He plucked up his courage, looked up at Lin Jiqing, and said in a low voice, "Teacher, thank you, not only because of the competition, but also because you let me know that I can also be better. I used to think that I couldn't do it, but you always believed in me. This is more important than the champion." Lin Jiqing was stunned for a moment, and her eyes were softer. She patted his shoulder lightly, and the sound was warm. "Sun Yu, I'm also very happy to have such growth. In fact, teaching you these topics is also a special experience for me. Watching you step by step to this day, I think all the efforts are worth it." The two of them smiled at each other, and there was an indescribable atmosphere in the air. Sun Yu's heart beats very fast. He knew that his feelings for Lin Jiqing had long exceeded the limits of his students, but he also understood that some words could not be expressed. He could only hold the flowers tightly and secretly told himself, it was enough to have such company. Let's go back to school." Lin Jiqing broke her silence and spoke lightly. "Today is a day worthy of congratulations. I'll ask you to have some food and then let's have a good chat." Sun Yu clicked the head, and the two walked shoulder to shoulder toward the field. The night was deeper, and the lights on the street were warm and soft. Sun Yu looked at Lin Jiqing's face and felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction in his heart. He knew that at this moment, whether it was the honor of the champion or this vague feeling, he would become the most precious memory in his life. After returning to school, Sun Yu's name finally became a legend. The National Championship Cup was thrown in the honor room of the school. Every time a freshman visits, he can always hear his story. An ordinary student, through hard work and perseverance, from bottom to backward, standing on the highest stage in the country. His affairs not only inspired countless classmates, but also made his family finally smile for a long time. My father asked for a leave from the construction site and went home to express his congratulations. Although my mother was not in good health, she still cooked a table of dishes with pride on her face. Sun Yu looked at his family's smile and his eyes were a little hot. He knew that this champion not only changed his fate, but also allowed his family to see hope. The prize money in the competition can help the family to relieve economic pressure, and even allow the mother to treat her illness well. He finally did it and changed everything. And the relationship with Lin Jiqing also became more subtle during this period. Although the two never said it clearly, the eye contact during the guidance after class and every unintentional touch made the deer in Sun Yu's heart rush. He knew that this relationship might never have any results, but he also understood that being able to accompany such a person was his greatest blessing. One night, Sun Yu and Lin Jiqing were walking on the campus playground. The night was quiet and the moonlight shone on the two people, pulling out a long shadow. Sun Yu looked at Lin Jiqing beside him, plucked up his courage and said in a low voice, "Teacher, thank you for accompanying me all the way. If it weren't for you, I might never have been here today. I don't know what to say, but I really cherish every moment I'm with you." Lin Jiqing stopped walking and turned to look at him, her eyes flashing with a slurred look, but she immediately smiled and said softly, "Sun Yu, I am the same. I am very happy to see you grow. The road ahead is still very long. No matter where you go, remember to believe in yourself, just like I have always believed in you." Sun Yu felt a palpitation in his heart. He clicked a little, but he didn't say anything more. The two continued to walk forward. The night wind blew gently, carrying a touch of joy, but Sun Yu's heart was as warm as the sunlight of spring. He knew that this relationship might only be stuck in tacit vain, but this ending was enough for him. Under the moonlight, on the campus path, the backs of the two people were moving far away. Sun Yu clenched his fists and secretly swore, no matter how difficult the days in the future are, he will do his best to pursue his dreams and protect those precious people like today. And all of this began to change from that ordinary boy,